exhausted and didn't fully know why. Were alone were enough, you would have already healed. Nervous system co-regulates. How much longer are you going to try this alone further? And as always, hey Liberator, I want to start today a little differently. I want to talk to you, specifically to you, before we get into anything else. You came to episode 1 of this series somewhere in the middle of your own story. Maybe you were exhausted and didn't fully know why. Maybe you were functioning, holding things together, showing up, keeping it moving, but something underneath was unraveling. Maybe you'd been seen and told by doctors that your labs were fine, and by family that you just need to think more positively, and by your own inner voice that you should be grateful and push through. And then you sat down with episode 1 and somebody finally named it: the survival loop. That low-grade chronic state of emergency, that chronic illness and unresolved trauma and years of carrying everything alone can lock a nervous system into. The exhaustion that sleep can't fix. The brain fog that makes you feel like you are failing. The emotional flatness that nobody around me can see. You recognized yourself. I know you did. Because the comments told me so. Because y'all emailed me. Because you sent this to your sister and to your best friend and said, "This is me." So even if you use these episodes to educate someone on what you're going through, if you can't always put it into words. And in episode 2, we looked at the invoice. The hidden accumulating cost of staying in survival mode. The physical cost, the relational cost, the identity cost, the joy that got quietly rationed away. That episode was hard and heavy. I know it was hard. Some of you have told me that you had to pause it and come back. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. You're letting it land instead of letting it pass. In episode 3, you picked up the plan. 7 days, 1 daily action, and a map for the road that you've been wandering without one. And now you're here. Episode 4. I want to tell you what I see from here. What I see is a woman who has done 4 weeks of honest, courageous, uncomfortable work on herself. A woman who didn't click away when it got heavy, who didn't dismiss what she recognized is true. And that's so easily done. Who showed up episode after episode for something she was beginning to believe she might deserve. You showed up for this series in the same way I need you to show up for yourself. Consistently, honestly, even when it's hard. And today is the last episode in that series. And I want you to do 2 things. I want you to close the loop on everything we've been building, and I want you to open a door. Not push through it, just open it. And what you do is up to you. So let's finish this. Okay, over these 4 episodes, we've covered a lot of ground. And I want you to name something that you've observed, or I want to name something that I've observed in years of working with women with chronic illness in survival mode and the quiet desperation of managing a life that isn't quite working. There are 3 tensions that women feel that keeps them stuck. Not because they're weak, and not because they don't care, but because of lack of information, lack of application. But because these 3 specific forces are working against them. And until they're named, they stay invisible. We've learned this. And invisible forces are the hardest to overcome. Okay, so tension 1, knowing versus doing. All right, the tension. She knows what she needs to do. She has the information. She's watched the videos, read the books, downloaded the guides. She knows about cortisol. She knows about rest. She knows the survival loop is real. And she still hasn't changed. Okay, here's the resolution. Knowing is necessary, but it's not sufficient. The gap between knowing and doing is not filled with more information. It's filled with consistent action inside a supportive structure. The nervous system does not respond to knowledge. It responds to experience. Repeated, supported experience. And I want to say this as directly and as lovingly as I know how. If information alone were enough, you would have already healed. You would already have the results that you're searching for. Because you're not short on information, you're short on the container that turns information into transformation. I tell you this all the time. I'm not going to teach you anything you probably don't already know. But, however, I am going to teach you how to do something that you've never done before. That's where support in a container comes in. Talking about that container, tension number 2 is alone versus supported. And honey, you can go alone as long as you want to, but you're not going to get far. She has been trying to heal in isolation. Reading alone, implementing alone, struggling alone, telling herself that she should be able to figure this out. She's smart. Feeling quietly ashamed that she hasn't yet. Performing fine for the world and privately running out of runway. Okay, here's the resolution. You were never designed for this. Your nervous system co-regulates with safe others when it's safe. It literally cannot heal in isolation. The research on social connection and healing is unambiguous. Community is not an add-on to recovery, it's a necessity. For the human nervous system, community is recovery. Ecclesiastes 4, 9, and 10 says 2 are better than 1 because they have good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no man to help him up. This is not a metaphor. This is not poetry. This is literal, ancient, spiritually grounded description of what the nervous system needs. A hand, a witness, someone who helps you when you fall, before you're finished falling. Take a minute to sit with that. Tension number 3, surviving versus becoming. Ooh, she's gotten so good at surviving that she has almost forgotten what she was meant for. Her ceiling has lowered so gradually that she didn't even notice it dropping. She no longer asks what her life could look like. She just asks, how long to get through this week? How do I get through this? Okay, so here's her resolution. Survival mode is not your ceiling. It's actually your floor. It's a temporary operating system that your body adopted to keep you safe. But that's not who you are. It's not your identity. It's not your future. And at the moment you stop mistaking that adaptation for the person you are, everything changes. You're not your diagnosis. When I had Lyme disease, I talked about this all the time. I have Lyme, it doesn't have me. And I got rid of it. So I don't deal with that anymore, but I deal with all my other stuff. You're also not your history. You are not the sum of what you survived. It makes for a very powerful story of hope, which is why I'm here talking to you now. But I want you to remember you are who you are becoming. And that becoming, that specific, personal, yours and nobody else's becoming is exactly what the right support can unlock. I want to talk about something that I think gets lost in online wellness space. Something that the sheer volume of information, of programs, of courses, of challenges, of 30-day resets has almost completely obscured. That the path of survival mode is not the same for every woman. It's not. I wish it were simpler. I wish I could give you one plan, one protocol, one meal schedule, one movement routine, and a mindset framework that would work exactly the same way for everybody in every season of life and with every history and every diagnosis. But That's not how bodies work. And that's not how healing works. The woman who's been in survival mode for 3 years because of lupus needs a different starting point than the woman who has been in survival mode for 30 years because of childhood trauma. The woman whose primary depletion is physical needs a different first step than the woman whose primary depletion is relational. The woman who scores an 8 out of 8 on the survival belief section of the audit needs a different emphasis of what the woman whose highest score is rest and recovery barriers. The path out is personal. It has to be. That's why I've built in one-on-one sessions into the 90-day breakthrough. Not as a bonus, as the spine of the whole thing. I like the connection. I want to learn your story. So here's what happens in those sessions. You don't get a script. You don't get the same 6 questions asked the same way to every client. What you get is me. Having read your intake form, having listened to what you said in group calls, having watched where you're moving and where you're stalling. Because everybody stalls at a different place. I want to meet you exactly where you are right now with a specific lever that will move the specific system forward for you. For one woman, the lever was her morning routine. The moment she started eating protein first, her whole day shifted. Can't tell you how many times I've seen that light bulb turn on. I love it. For the woman who was in one conversation, I guided her through about a relationship she was pouring herself into that was actively keeping her in survival mode. We didn't change her diet. We changed what she was carrying. For another woman, it was giving her permission, actual, specific, personal, Anna Kate says so permission, to stop doing the one thing that she had been doing out of obligation for 12 years. Within a week, her inflammation markers had measurably shifted. Generic advice keeps you stuck. Tailored guidance gets you moving, not because the tailored advice is magic, but because it fits. If your body, your history, your season, your nervous system, your specific combination of depleted and overactivated, and something that fits finally works. That's what I want to offer you. Not a program to adapt yourself, trying to figure out which parts apply to you, a coach. Me, who adapts to you, who looks at where you are and tells you what to do next. Not in general, but specifically for you right now. I want to ask you to do something. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. If you're driving, just let your gaze soften a little bit. And I want to walk you somewhere. I want you to imagine 90 days from now. I love this exercise. Not a perfect version of 90 days. Not a fantasy where the diagnosis is gone, hard things never happen, just real, different version. A version where you've been doing the work with support, with accountability, and with someone in your corner who actually knows your story. What does that morning look like? You wake up and your first thought is not dread. It's not the mental inventory of everything that hurts, everything that needs to be managed, everything that is going to be hard. Your first thought is something quieter. Something like, I can do today. You do your first 4 breaths before you pick up your phone. Not because you're forcing yourself, not because you put a sticky note on the ceiling, but because over 90 days, it has become the thing that your body reaches for when it wakes up. A small signal, a familiar message, we're safe. We can begin. You eat breakfast within 45 minutes of waking up. You don't think about it much anymore. It's just what you do. Your body expects it now. And somewhere underneath the surface, your cortisol rhythm is different. Not perfect, just different. Steadier. You move through the morning with less friction than you used to. The brain fog is completely gone. And some days it still rolls in, but there are hours of genuine clarity now. You have a thought and you finish it. You start a task and you complete it. Your creativity is on fire. That is not a small thing. That is your prefrontal cortex coming back online after a long time. You're in a group of women who know you by name. You've heard your real story, not the performed one. Women who say, when I'm struggling this week, and you respond with advice that you didn't ask for, but something like, I know, I see you. Keep going. And something in your nervous system every single time unclenches just a little bit. Being seen is powerful. You've had 6 connections with me that no one had. In those conversations where you were stuck and shown exactly the next move, not generally, not in theory, but how to move. I watched you implement the thing that was specific to you, and I watched it work. Not because it was magic, but because it fit. It fit you. Your relationship to your body is different. Not fixed, different. You've stopped treating it like an enemy and started treating it like a partner to be listened to. It's been trying to tell you something for years, and you're finally engaging in the conversation. And the one thing that surprises you most, that you didn't expect, is the joy. Not euphoria, not healed person, constant happiness, just ordinary joy. The kind that shows up when you're making your tea and singing a song that comes out on the radio, and you feel it. You actually feel it. Instead of noticing it distantly the way you used to, you're engaged. The kind that shows up when your kid says something funny and you laugh fully, like on the ground about to pee your pants. Not just with your face, but with your whole body. The kind that shows up on Sunday afternoon when you have 2 hours with nothing that needs producing. Instead of feeling guilty, you rest. And that's okay. That is what 90 days of intentional, supported, tailored healing looks like. Not perfect, not finished. Free from the loop, free from the list and the lies and the rest is failure. Free from the isolation of doing it alone. Free from the shrinking. Free enough to begin becoming the woman that you were always meant to be. My favorite verse is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope in the future. This is the vision. Not my vision for you, God's vision for you. A future, a hope, a prospering. Not after you have pushed through hard enough. Not after you've checked off everything on the list. Not when you finally earn rest. Now, in this season with this body as you are. Okay, I'm going to tell you exactly what the 90-day breakthrough is. Not the marketing version, the real version. What happens inside and what you can expect, and what I personally bring to every single woman who says yes. We have a support system that tells your body to reframe its signals. So we're also going to put you in a private group coaching community. It's private. Everybody in there is on a very same path as you. It's closed, judgment-free group of women who exactly where you are. Managing chronic illness, processing old wounds, choosing to move forward despite everything. And you also get 6 one-on-one private sessions with me. This is where the tailoring happens. 6 dedicated sessions when I read your intake, listen to your specific story, assess your survival loop, and what is most activated. Not in general, but right now. And tell you exactly what to address first. Not a script, not a generic protocol. Me seeing you and responding to you. Everyone I work with is at a different level. Part of my job is finding yours, and I'm very good at finding it. So again, within these 90 days, I'm going to give you meal plans and workouts, just an additional resource that you can pull from. Because we need to nourish our body and move forward so we can start to repair these other things as well. So there is a daily protocol that we do. We work on nervous system work, belief patterns, habit foundations, faith integration, and identity reconstruction. We talk about orientation all the time. So this is structured week to week across the 90 days and how exactly what you need to do and what comes next. No guessing, no white knuckling. We're not bootstrapping this. This is not a course. This is not a challenge. This is guided transformation, personal, supported, and tailored to exactly where you are. So I want to say one more thing about coaching before we close. I have lived every lesson I teach. I'm not a wellness influencer who discovered green juice and called it a transformation. I'm a woman who spent years in survival mode, managed a lupus diagnosis while holding everything together. I sat in my own parking lot moments, crying in the bathtub, and slowly and surely, with the right support, the right framework, and the right community, I found a way out. I know what it feels like to be the woman watching this video. And this video didn't exist when I was going through it. I know the specific flavor of hope and hesitation that lives in your chest right now. This sounds like it's what I need, sitting right next to the girl, but I've tried things before and I've always ended up back here. I know that battle. I want to speak directly to that second voice for a moment. The reason you've ended up back here when you started, it's not because you're weak. It's not because healing isn't available to you. It's because you've been trying to heal using a system that doesn't have tailored support built in. You've been doing it alone with a generic plan or with a community that doesn't quite understand what you're carrying. The 90-day breakthrough was built specifically to address those exact gaps. Community, a tailored plan, and a coach that responds to you, not a template. Time can be different. This time can be different. Not because the offer is perfect, but because the fit is right. And when the fit is right, the work actually works. So we've come a long way together. 4 episodes, 4 weeks. A whole series built around one central truth. You're not broken. You have been embracing for a very long time. In isolation, without a map, without someone in your corner who can see you clearly and tell you what to do next. We named the loop. We counted the cost. We handed you a plan. And now I want to ask you something. And I want you to answer it honestly, not out loud, just to yourself right now. How much longer are you going to try this alone? Not alone in the sense of not having people in your life who love you. I know you have people. But alone in the specific, particular, exhausting way of navigating your healing without a guide who knows your story. Implementing strategies without someone to adjust them or tweak them or shift them when they're not quite fitting right. Struggling through the hard weeks without community who has heard your name and your story and knows what you've been carrying. That kind of alone. Because that kind of alone is a choice. It doesn't feel like one. It feels like default. It feels like this is what everybody does, but it's a choice. And you're allowed to make a different one. You were never meant to do this alone. That is not a tagline. It's how you were designed. The door to the 90-day breakthrough is always open. The link is below this video and in the description. And when you click it, you'll see exactly how to apply. Because I do read every application, I want you to know where you are. I want to know where you are. I want to know what you've been carrying. Because that moment, I know I can begin to tailoring what comes next for you. Specifically, personally, with your name and your story behind it. Not a generic plan. Your plan. Built into response to where you are now. That's the offer. That's the invitation. And it's as genuine as I've ever said to you across this series. That's the offer. That's the invitation. And it is as genuine as anything I've ever said across this entire series. Before I let you go, thank you. Thank you for trusting me with 4 episodes of your life. Thank you for showing up when it was uncomfortable, for doing the work. Thank you for being the kind of woman who, when she hears something true, she leans towards it instead of away. The leaning toward, that's the whole thing. That's the beginning of every breakthrough I've ever witnessed. Not the grand gesture, not the perfect circumstances, just a woman who heard something and leaned toward it. The woman who decided to take action. You leaned. I saw it. Now lean a little further. And as always, go out and liberate your awesome.